quite a commitment. My wife just really loves it. And for that 2-week period, I'm part of a program that's very elite for chief officers. Only 200 are accepted each year. It's called the Executive Fire Officer Program. And we stay at the Fire Academy the entire time. And during that time, they drive home facts and they make you learn things that you wouldn't learn otherwise. And the reason they do this is they want to have a new breed of chiefs. They want to have a professional breed of chiefs that look at things differently, that are data-driven. And the things that I discovered while I was there were very shocking to me. And it caused me to rethink my position on residential sprinklers. I had to do a presentation in front of my classmates. And the presentation involved having people stand up and showing how many people would have died in a fire, how many people would have died in a home, how many people could have survived with residential sprinklers. And as I'm watching this process, I'm starting to become a believer myself. So I'm not here to convince you necessarily. I'd like to. I think the facts will speak for themselves. And all I'm really here for is to educate you and let you know what's behind this and what's involved. When this all started, when I came back from the Fire Academy, they give us this monster paper to do every year. It's reaching 100 pages right now. And part of that was I went to each of the villages we protect. I work for a fire district. And each village I sought someone out that I could speak to and see what were the obstacles to that village enacting an ordinance for residential sprinklers. And I'm going to tell you more about what this entails. I'll try to be brief, I promise. And in the process, it was the most interesting thing because I had changed my mind. My heart had changed about residential sprinklers, but I'm thinking, how am I going to get this across to other people? So that's another thing they drive home with you at the EFO class, is that at the Fire Academy, you have a responsibility. You're part of an elite program. You cannot learn this and not do anything about it. So I'm thinking, okay, I buy that, I believe it, but how do I do it? The interesting thing was, as I started to interview people, I came here and interviewed Russ, I interviewed the mayor, and I interviewed people at Lincolnshire, at Vernon Hills, and at Matawa. And in each instance, there was interest. And there was the intent was not to educate them as much as it was to find out what their thoughts were. But in the process, people were getting information, people were showing interest. Lo and behold, we had a chance to host what is called a side-by-side burn demonstration. It's where they construct 2 mock rooms side by side, and they set a fire in at the same time. One has a sprinkler, one does not. Actually, they don't set it at the same time. That's one way to do it. The one that Bruce was at, they didn't do it that way. But one has a sprinkler, one doesn't. They show you what happens. And the first thing I'll tell you is it shocked me. I've been doing this for 30 years, but I always pull up after everything has gotten bad, and you don't see it get that way. And you think that there's a lot of time in between when it started and when it started to get bad. And what I found out, that's not the case. And the amount of time that I thought people had to get out of a house, 30-year firefighter, I was off, totally. And I think everybody who sees a side-by-side burn figures that out pretty quickly because they saw the concept all by themselves. So anyway, what happened was the village of Lincolnshire offered to host the side-by-side burn behind the city hall. So we had the Northern Illinois Sprinkler Board come out, they set it up. Everybody was invited from each of the 4 villages, no citizens, just elected officials and staff. And we had a great turnout. Bruce was able to attend, and I know others would have liked to. Some people were out of town at the time. It really hit home with people. As the side-by-side burn occurred, I was a moderator that night, and I took people through the time frames with the fire department. And the fact that even when things work perfectly, everything takes time. When you have a fire in your house, you don't immediately pick up the phone and call 911. Most people typically go see what it is and try to do something about it before they ever take the next step, unless somebody's there with them. After that step is finally taken and time has been lost, it takes time for dispatch to route the call and tone us out, and that's the first time we are even aware that something's wrong. Middle of the night, it's going to take 60 to 90 seconds for the guys to get dressed in their clothes, if they're sleeping, get dressed in their fire gear, get in the rig, get seat belted in, and start rolling. And then there's a time lost to get there. So this all adds up, and that's what I'm going to show you tonight with this brief video. Bruce, I don't know if you want to say anything or if you want to wait till after I'm done.
All I can say is watching the demonstration, it was actually shocking how fast the fire moved and how hot that room got without the sprinklers and how quickly the fire was knocked out with, frankly, minimal than water damage. in the room that was sprinkled. It was just truly shocking. I was amazed.
So I'm going to show you the video. I'm going to shut off some lights in a second here.
This is going to be followed by...
Do you want me to turn it?
In the room without the, with the sprinkler head. And the other room was starting to grow as far as the fire. It was getting larger. It was consuming more inside the room. By 60 seconds, the room was almost a ball of flame. And you would not have been able to survive in there. So what am I saying with this? I'm saying if you have a residential sprinkler, you're buying yourself time to get out. Now, some people would say, I don't need that time. Some people would say, it's not necessary. Do you have children? Do you have elderly? Do you have an invalid? Do people do what you expect them to do when there's a fire? Do they normally get up and go out where they're supposed to? I'll tell you honestly, people don't do that. If there's smoke in the house and you get a good snootful of smoke, you're going to get disoriented. You're not going to think correctly. You're not going to be aware as much as you think you will be. If there's children in the house, they have a tendency to go hide in the closet. They're not going to do what you think they're going to do. And bad things happen. That's why people die in fires. What the video would have shown you, and once again I apologize, there was a lot of work setting that up today. 8 out of 10 people who die in a fire die in a home. I was surprised to hear that. I knew a lot of people died in homes, but not 8 out of 10. Of those 8 out of 10 who died in the home, 80% of them would have lived if they were in a sprinklered residence. Now, if you have 10 people stand up and say, you're all going to die in your home, but 8 of you can sit down because you have sprinklers, that really hits home. It's hard not to let that move you a little bit and cause you to think, why wouldn't we do that? So why don't we do that? There's a lot of myths out there. Builders are against it because they see it as just increasing the home value. I interviewed a builder, and the interesting thing was that by the time I got done with the interview, he had changed his mind. He had changed his position. He had always been told it was a bad idea by other builders, didn't really know why. The real estate agencies sometimes are against it because they don't necessarily see the value in it. People in general, until they're educated, don't see the value in it. Well, when we had a side-by-side burn demonstration behind the firehouse at our open house, now this was a different event, not the one that Bruce was at, we had 50 people come out there to watch. And I wandered the crowd as part of my paper. They didn't know why I was asking questions. And I asked them, do you think sprinklers are necessary? Would you want them in your own house? And just about to a person, they're like, probably not. I'm just here to see the fire. So we lit the fire. And like Bruce was saying, people that were too close started to back up because it was so hot. And when people saw the sprinkler head go off, it almost seemed like it went off too soon. And what does that mean in a real fire? What it means is if it's your house and you have a room fire, if my guys come in and do their job to the best of their ability and contain that fire to that room, you are still going to have a trashed house from the smoke and water damage that's going to result. The smoke will just permeate everything. It's awful, and you will not be able to live there in most instances. If you have a residential sprinkler, on the other hand, you're going to have a very wet room. But once again, one of the myths, that sprinkler head, if one goes off, they all go off. That's not true. It's just the one in the area of the fire, or maybe 2. Another myth is that smoke will set it off. That's not true. It requires heat to set it off. It's not going to flood your home. You're not going to be swimming in the sprinkler. It's going to cause everything to get very wet. But the thing is, the rest of your house is going to be livable. So it has saved a great deal. And yes, you've got a very wet room to take care of, but as soon as the fire department gets there and checks to make sure that the fire is out, we're going to turn it off, and it stops. Now, how much water? Sprinkler head up to 25 gallons per minute, typically around 18, they tell me.